So it's time for another fanfiction idea dealing with the Disney Universal Monster AU universe I've been building. I've been really liking this, slowly building each one, kind of like the phases in a Marvel movie. It's kind of fun. It's actually a lot of fun, if I'm being honest. Anyway, so let's talk about our next one, and this might be the most wild one yet. And that is, you can see Ron Stoppable, the creature from the Black Lagoon. So this is going to be a vastly different take. Because I was thinking, how should I bring in the creature from the Black Lagoon? How should I bring in the Gill Man? And I thought about it, and I thought I would mix and match with a famous book from a certain author of science, the father of science. If Mary Shelley is the mother of all science fiction, then he is definitely the father of it. Anyway, so, without further ado, let's talk about this. So the story begins out at sea, where Ron Stoppable has basically been a soldier going home from war and returning back to the Americas. He's been serving as a mercenary in another war in Europe because he wasn't there during, shenanigans were going on in the Americas, but now he's ready to return home. But a storm destroys the ship, and he is left the only survivor in a single boat. And he's been out there for 3 days, and he's like, yep, I'm gonna accept death right about now. I am 100% probably not gonna make it out of this alive. But as chance would have it, as he prepares to be well, sweet death, I embrace thee, he sees off in the distance an island. And at first he thinks, well, I've gone completely insane. There's no way an island is out here. But it turns out, yes, that island is real. And now he has to make a mad dash to get to that island. So with everything he's got, he rows with all of his remaining strength towards the island, and it is a real island, but he runs out of strength and just collapses on the beach. But he's like, oh my god, actual land. And as he's passing out, this figure of a woman stands over him and is slowly reaching for him, and he's like, are you an angel? And passes out. So he wakes up later. He wakes up in a bungalow, and he's just I have no idea what's going on. Am I dead? Am I dreaming? Am I in heaven, hell? What's going on? And that's when he hears a voice go, oh, you're awake. That's good. That's real good. And that voice, he turns around and sees a scientist with blue skin, and he goes, allow me to introduce myself, my good man. I am Dr. Dracken. And this is my assistant, Shigo. Welcome to my private island. And he's like, your skin's blue. And he's like, how kind of you to point out. Yes, my skin is blue. It's due to an incredibly rare skin disease. But don't worry, it's not contagious. So, who are you? And Ron explains, I'm Ron Stoppable. I was headed back home, and then a storm destroyed my ship. I was the only survivor. And thank you for saving me, but can I, do you have, a boat or something I can use to go the rest of the way? Or is there, oh, well, yeah, I live here, doing my research, and tell you what, the next supply ship should be rolling in about, I'd say next month. So you can stay here for for the rest of the month, and then you can leave next one. I would offer you something else, but I don't really leave the island. And he's like, okay, you said you're a doctor. What are you a doctor of exactly? And he goes, have you ever heard of Charles Darwin? And Ron's like, yeah, I've heard of him. Darwin basically talked about evolution and whatnot, and I was a massive fan of his work. And this is I am something of a biologist and a believer of evolution and making it more expedient. And he's like, ominous, but Ron's like ominous, but thank you for saving me. So later that night, he is having dinner with Dr. Dracken, and Dracken's telling him about all of his stuff, And he's like, and Dracken's like, I'm so sorry. It's so often I don't have, new, guests around here, around, aside from Shigo. And Shigo's just off in the back, just kind of like glaring at Ron. And Ron points out, was she the one who saved me? And he's like, oh no, Shigo doesn't like anyone. I think she doesn't even like me. No, the person who saved you was my goddaughter, Kimberly. And that's when Kim walks in, and Ron is immediately taken aback by her beauty. And he's just like, hi, I'm Ron. And she goes, hi, I found you when I was out riding on the beach, or, I'm glad you're okay. And Dracken explains, like, Kim is my goddaughter, and her parents were my associates. They were associates who died in an accident a few years ago. I've basically raised Kim as my own, and she's been a helpful assistant in my research and my work. And he's like, you keep talking about like work and whatnot, and this island, can I see what's going on? He's like, probably not tonight. The island does have like poisonous snakes and spiders and whatnot. Tell you what, if you really want to see what I'm working on here, go first thing in the morning. I'll show you around. Just keep an open mind, Mr. Stoppable. And Ron's like, okay, cool. I don't like how that went, but neat. And as the night goes on, he hears like animal noises, but he swears they sound almost human. Like, they sound almost, human-like in those cries. But as he's like sleeping there, he basically also has like horrible nightmares, like these just horrible nightmares of of animals and out in the jungle, and sees Kim a lot in there. But he wakes up and he's like, well, I just went through a horrible traumatic experience. No doubt I'm lucky I didn't lose my mind. So he wakes up next morning and he's having breakfast, and Dracken walks in and is like, Ron, my boy, Mr. Stoppable, my boy, are you still interested in seeing my work? And he's like, I'm curious, but also I kind of fear it. And he's like, it may come as a shock, but I guarantee you'll have an open mind to it. So Dracken takes Ron, him, Ron, Kim, and Shigo go out into the forest, and Dracken shows what he's been working on. Animal-human hybrids. Yep, if you didn't guess already, this version of how we're doing the creature is by way of the Island of Dr. Moreau, or also known as the Island of Lost Souls. So, Dracken basically explains, like, yes, I believe, like I told you, I am a firm believer and, supporter of evolution, and I've seen a lot of calamities occur in this world, and I want to show, use human DNA and animal DNA and create a new species, basically help the human race hyper-evolve to combat these threats and other ones, because I foresee that that mankind, unless it evolves, is going to end up either destroying itself or be destroyed by the world it creates. So, yeah, and he's like, you made these out of humans? I was like, oh yeah, they're animals that are made, that I evolved into humans. A lot of hard work and genetic testing went into it. It was rather difficult. And he's like, can they speak? And they're like, yes, we speak. Greetings, Father. And he's like, yes. And he goes, and what is the law? Obey the Father. And he's like, exactly. This is my new friend, Ronald Stoppable. He will be our guest for the rest of the month, and I expect you to treat him as such, lest we all have a visit to the House of Pain. And they're all like, yeah. And Ron's like, the House of Pain? He's like, and Dracken's just like, don't worry about it. It's just a word I use to scare them. Think of it where an unruly child goes to be disciplined. And Ron's like, well, I'm freaked out. I don't like this anymore. So they're having dinner again, and Ron is like, so, Doctor, I have to ask, this would have taken a lot of money. Are you a rich man? He goes, well, myself and the Possibles did have a lot of money. We did have money, but we didn't have enough money for something like this. We had a benefactor was helping us because they were curious about our research and how close to their research was to theirs. And they're like, well, who was it? And he goes, oh, that person was a one Dr. Marcy Wu. You may have heard of her and her, shall we say, eccentricities. And he goes, grave robbing. Yeah, I've heard of her. She's like, she's still a very, but yeah. He's like, yeah, but the thing of it is that she's still a very powerful and wealthy woman, and she's been helping me. She's also, whereas her work is also in the line of furthering the advancements of science, I'm more of evolution than she is. So, but she's been funding my work, and I've also been working with someone. I've also been getting funds from someone else too. Like there was another benefactor who, let's just say he's a little. He is. If you thought Marcy was eccentric, this guy is much more. And he's like, well, who's he? He's like, he prefers to just be called D. He's like, okay. So Ron, the next night, Ron is like curious and all that. He keeps having nightmares, and this time around, like he wakes up and his skin is like itchy, he thinks he's got like a bug bite or something, but his skin like really itches, and he's also become really thirsty. He's like in need of water. He's in need of like just a lot of water. Like he just wakes up thirsty. He's like, hey, and he sees Kim out at night, and he's just like getting water, and she's like, what are you doing up and about? And he's like, I think something bit me in my sleep, and like I'm really thirsty. And he goes, oh yeah, I can take it. And so Kim and Ron, Kim takes Ron to like get some water, and he's just like, hey, so tell me about your parents. Like, you're okay with, with Dracken's work? You're okay with that? And she's like, yeah. My family, my parents worked with him very closely. Not to this level, mind you, but like he took me in when my parents were killed. So, and he's like, well, how did your parents die? And she goes, they were killed in a fire in the lab due to an accident. And she's like, I know what you're thinking. No, Dracken didn't do it. And he's like, hey, can you be sure? And she's like, it's a hell of a thing, because like we could have just let you die on the beach, talking about my godfather like that, the man who's been nothing but charitable. And he's like, yeah, also making monsters. That's also something we need to talk about. Like the guy is making monsters, and yeah, but Kim is like, no, it's not like that. He's trying to better mankind. It's just he's doing it. It just looks ugly to you. But yeah, so they talk more, and they talk throughout the night, and Ron and Kim grow closer. The next day, Dracken wakes Ron up, and he's like, Mr. Stoppable, I need your help. And he's like, okay. Shigo and I have come to have discovered that one of our subjects have gone missing, and we're afraid he's gone feral, making him a danger to himself and others. We need to bring him back to the medical house. And he's like, the House of Pain? He's like, please don't call it that. So Dracken, Shigo, and Ron go out and find like one of a leopard man is in the midst of like killing and eating one of his own. He's like, good God. Dracken tranks him and brings him back to the house, back to the quote unquote House of Pain. And as he is, like, Ron feels like sick again, and he's like, oh, hang on, let me get you some medicine. You'll be tied up. You'll be all tidied up. But as Ron is like, he feels like he's touching his neck, and he's like, hey, that's new. And he looks, and he's like, gills. It's like gills are growing. And he's like, he goes to Dracken, he's like, what the hell did you do to me? And he's like, oh, I was hoping the mutation wouldn't take as fast. I was hoping it'd be slower so I could walk you through it, but clearly I was wrong, and this is kind of fascinating. How do you feel? I feel violated, asshole. I ask again, what did you do to me? And he's like, alright. The food you've been eating and the water you've been drinking have certain chemicals that I've been using to evolve you. The genetics I've been using, I've done a lot of mammals, but you'll be my first Homo ichthys. And I'm so curious to see what you'll turn into. He's like, what about letting me go? And he's like, I'm sorry, Mr. Stoppable, but I can't let you go out into I couldn't let you go out into the world and, you know, tell people of my island and my research before I could do that. Besides, I've been meaning, you know, I've done all this of turning humans and animals into humans. It's high time I turn a human into an animal and take these. You're phase 2. You're the start of my phase 2 of my projects. So from there, Ron is like tranked by Shigo and put in a tank. And from there, he's slowly, like, de-evolving, and he's becoming more, you know, animal-like. And Kim is, like, feeling sorry for him. She's, like, pitying him. And she's also becoming more suspicious of Dracken, because she was like, we weren't going to do this. You told me you weren't going to do this to him. And he's like, well, I couldn't let him go out into the world and expose my work before I could, you know, get it out there properly. You know, what would the world think if they weren't ready for it? So Kim snoops around and discovers that that her parents actually were trying to stop Drakken's mutations, but he ended up killing them. Dracken finds out, captures Kim, takes her to the House of Pain, and in doing so, Ron is there, and he's trying to break out because what's left of his humanity is still there. He breaks out and attacks Dr. Dracken, and in this ensuing fight, he starts freeing all the other humanoid, the ammonoids, or manimals, or whatever the fuck you want to call them, in the ensuing fight, and they all start rebelling against Dracken. Shigo, who is revealed to be, if you haven't guessed, if you probably already figured, she's also a human-animal hybrid, and she is that of a panther. So she and Ron get into a fight. They start killing each other until Ron kills Shigo. Dracken is taken by his creations and just butchered. And Kim is about to share the same fate, but Ron stops the other animals and carries her to the boat he was found in, and pushes her off and is telling her to go. So Ron now, it's been months later. Ron is now aquatic. He's living in a lagoon in the island, and that's when two new strangers come in, and Ron sees these two strangers skulking about in the shadows, and he follows them. The Manimals have basically taken over the island, and they're making up different tribes and warring against each other. But what's left of Drakken's home still stands in ruins. So from there, Ron follows them, and they're looking through all of his research and whatnot, and they're like, "You find anything?" "I ain't found fucking shit. Shut the fuck up." So Ron comes upon them, and it's actually Bill Cipher, who is our Mr. Hyde, if you remember, and Randy Cunningham, who's the Wolfman. The two of them were sent by Count Marco to find research to replicate Drakken's work. They wanted to recruit him, but he's dead. So now they have to start from square one and just take all the research they have left to try to make something new of it. But then they're like, well, we can't replicate this. Half of it's destroyed. We don't know how it works. And that's when Ron comes shambling in, and they're like, oh, this one's a little different from the others, isn't he? Yeah. Tell you what, maybe this trip isn't a total loss. Hey, Fishy, you want to come with us? So, there you go. But we do have an epilogue real fast. Basically, what has happened is that Kim was at sea for a week and then picked up by a nearby ship, and she's taken in. Everyone thinks she's crazy for talking about human-animal hybrids and the man turned into a fish man. But however, among the crew, someone goes, "I believe her," and and he's like, "Yeah, go ahead, Doctor. You need to check her out anyway." And she's like, "Well, who are you?" And he goes, "My name is Dr. Toffee. I know a thing or two about monsters." So Toffee survived his encounter with Marco, and now we're getting to the other side of it. Because remember, Toffee in this continuity is our Van Helsing. So now we're building into something else too. So there you go, guys. That is the next chapter of the Universal Monster Disney AU. Yeah, just comment below, let me know what you guys thought of this. I thought it'd be really cool to do Island of Dr. Moreau and mix it with the creature from the Black Lagoon lore. Anyway, so yeah, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.